Hello, everybody, and welcome to Topic Hash Podcast, where we're just gonna talk about a single thing, and then that's it. That's the podcast now, just a single thing. And today we're going to talk about what, fiatjaf?
Inflation,
Yes,
or how people like to call it, tail emission.
yes, fucking up to 21 million. That's what we're gonna talk about. So, I don't know. I came
What?
across some chatter about this stuff, but I didn't actually follow the discussion that was going on. Did you see anything?
No, I didn't see anything. Is
Oh.
that the topic? Like we don't have any idea.
Yes, we're just
What
gonna
I-
talk about it, and we have no idea what actually is being discussed. We just vaguely heard something about the
No, I
fact
know.
that it was discussed, and now we're just gonna talk about it.
Okay. I know Peter Todd likes it.
Yeah, so I
Maybe
think
he
it's all
has-
based
he
off the
defends it.
Peter. I think it's based off the Peter Todd stuff, right?
Okay, yeah.
Um,
And
So-
why does he like it?
well, I think we need to discuss two things, right? So the 21 million on the one hand, so that's the hard cap, and then the implications of what's going on there. So first, the importance of the 21 million, or the fact that there is a hard cap to the supply of Bitcoin. What are your ideas on that, fiatjaf?
I don't know. I don't know.
You have no
I think it's
outspoken.
important. I think it's important to
You do?
not have inflation. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think if you have to pick an arbitrary number of
Ze- Zero.
new
ze-
Bitcoin,
zero is the
zero
best.
the best arbitrary number. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So because personally, I think that what's important on the first. So what's important is that it's a rule, right? So everybody knows what's going on. Everybody can predict what's going on. So there's stability in that sense. So I think that's the first thing, and then the second thing is then, okay, but what arbitrary number are you going to pick? And I think
Well, the number has already been picked.
yes. Okay.
So if you change it,
Yes, so let's first disclaimer. This discussion is completely fucking useless because nothing about this is ever going to change. Right?
why is Peter Todd wasting his time promoting this idea? And he says like, "Oh, I imagine the future people will be more malleable. They will."
Okay, we'll get
evaluate
to
these
that.
ideas.
Right? Well, we'll get to that. So
But why can't I bring this topic now?
because,
Okay, go on. Say
because
what
there's
you
an
want
order to things. So
to say. Why do you decide the order, not me?
you had no opinion. I let you start. And you said I
No,
don't
you
know,
just
I don't-
you just. Okay. Okay.
So, I think having it as a set rule is important, so everybody knows what's going on. It's predictable, etc. I think the fetishism of the zero number, of like 21 million, and the fact that it's a hard cap, that's just a post hoc rationalization that's going on. If Satoshi implemented like a linear inflation, or like not a percentage, but just like a number. So maybe just say like 50 Bitcoin per block, and that's it, right? It's just going to be 50 Bitcoin. Then, in percentage terms, your inflation is actually going down, right, over time. And I personally think then it would have been just as fine, right? I think people make the hard cap thing more important than it actually is, just because that's the thing it is now. And our Lord and Savior Satoshi Nakamoto made that decision, so it's the best decision, right?
Yeah.
That's the feeling I get there. Although I do admit that in terms of meme value, 21 million or like zero inflation or a hard cap, that's easier. It's an easier message, right?
Yes. That's true.
Just easier to get across. Just clicks better. But I think in the grand scheme of things, that isn't that important. The fact that it's like a hard set rule that doesn't change is the important thing. And obviously, like, you don't want to have like it having runaway inflation. I think if it would be like a percentage inflation, like 2%, then that might become an issue, right? Because you're not getting. Well, there's also this aspect of like FOMO on fundamentals. You need like an incentive for people to join in now instead of to get the idea, to have the idea that they should have joined in yesterday. So they're going to join in now instead of tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That is important.
That used to work. It's not working anymore.
What does it need to work anymore? We already bootstrapped for the most part, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, we have publicly traded mining companies. I mean, how much more bootstrapping do you want to?
Well,
Yeah,
I want
well,
everybody in the world using the same.
Yes, okay. But in terms of like getting the system off the ground, right? You need there is an initial chicken and egg problem, and
I do think that the hard cap played a role in that. I don't know. People were just throwing bitcoins around at the time.
right. I think so. This is if
They
I
didn't
look
care.
because if I look at myself, it didn't actually really click for a very, very, very long time. I studied
It only
Bitcoin.
clicked when you read Safety's book. I see.
No, I studied Bitcoin for such a freaking long time before actually buying any. Because I never realized it's like
You had to buy. You couldn't just study forever because that's what you really wanted.
well, yes, also, but the is it a Satoshi method or is it like Hal Finney, where I think it's Satoshi where he said like you can, or is it, I don't know, I can't recall. So you might as well get some if it takes off, right?
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah, just in case. That notion never occurred to me for a very long time.
Yeah, that message should have been more publicized.
That didn't click for so long, unfortunately for me, right? But anyway, yeah, I do. So like I already mentioned, I do think that is a component, right? The mean value of it. But now let's start to go to the reason as to why behind the argument of why Peter Todd even brings this up, right? And this is something that I also thought about, is that technically now the Bitcoin that we have now, Bitcoin has two phases in it inherently. There is a state change in Bitcoin, and it gradually works towards it, and then there's this hard switch, and that's the moment where the subsidy is zero. Right? There is an actual hard moment between there is a subsidy and there is no subsidy.
Yeah, but that's relevant, probably, right?
Well, we're
Hopefully.
we approach it fast and then very slowly, right? Because we're already at 90% or something. I think we're above 90 million now.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
so-
know, probably.
Yeah, and that last 10% is going to take freaking ages. What is it, like 90 years now or something like that? So we're already approaching that point in practical terms, and you don't know. The problem is we cannot just like, so stating that the cutoff point is at the 21 something where the subsidy is actually zero is kind of silly, right? Because we're gonna, in practical terms, you hit that point way earlier, but we don't actually know. Then it becomes like really difficult in saying like where in practical terms that point is actually hit. It might be now, might be in like two halvings. The point is that there is a change in the dynamic in relation to mining the moment subsidy becomes insignificant. Let's call it that, right?
Yeah.
The marginalization of subsidy. And let's take, for example, the did you see the 20 or the 19 Bitcoin fee thing?
Yeah, the miner guy said he would return the money.
Yeah,
Something.
apparently it was PayPal. At least that's the message I just saw.
Did
Obviously,
he return the money?
it was just a statement, right? It's just somebody saying breaking with no sources whatsoever. Because that's how the fucking internet works now. So let's just assume it's PayPal, which is hilarious. Anyway, to inform our listeners who don't know what's going on. So I think yesterday, or like, there was somebody who made a Bitcoin transaction that used a input of like 20 something Bitcoin. And instead of having a change address, or like a change output, there was no change output defined. So the transaction paid like 19 Bitcoin in fees. And it didn't even use Taproot, so it could have saved 4%. Right?
4%?
Yes.
No, it would have saved much less percent in
Well,
this case.
Mempool.space said it was 4%. So, or maybe that's up to 4%. I don't know. Whatever. In any event, yeah, and then it was mined by F2Pool. So the guy behind F2Pool mentions like, okay, we're gonna put this on hold, and the person behind this can contact us within 3 days. If they don't contact us within 3 days, then we're gonna share it on share the booty amongst our.
Why haven't this event triggered fee sniping
Yes.
reorg?
So that's
another topic for
yeah,
another
no,
show.
that's what I was going to, right?
Okay.
That's the actual topic of discussion behind the telemission thing.
Really?
Yes.
So you're changing topics. You promised one topic.
It's the same topic.
No, that's another topic. That's the fee sniping show. I can't even see it. We'll have 2 shows. Fee sniping.
Okay. Well, it's okay. Okay. I was just bringing it up as an example because that's the point, right? The point is that if you don't have any subsidies,
the other show.
There. So for one thing, it's like empty blocks won't be a thing because there's no point in mining an empty block anymore, right? Because now there is a point in mining the empty block, because you're just gonna get the subsidy anyway. So but it starts to, the more, or how am I going to put this? The more insignificant subsidies become, the more significant fees become, the more the stability of mining relies on the state of the mempool at the time. Where if you have like a large backlog in your mempool, then it's fine, right? Because then there is no particular incentive for a miner to re-mine a block to snipe fees, right? Because there are plenty of other transactions he can include into the block.
But if you have one transaction that is paying way more than everything else.
Yes, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen right now. So at least I haven't seen any evidence of their any attempts to reorg.
But in the fee sniping show, we should talk about why. Like the incentive is there.
Yes.
The miners should have done it.
Yes, but I don't think their systems are like set up for that yet. But the point is that because the incentives are there, eventually those systems will be set up for that. It's a bit of tricky math, I guess, like doing the risk assessment. But now I did some calculations, so it's like 4x the regular block reward. Because this block reward of this particular block with the 19 Bitcoin in it was 4 times larger than the other blocks around there. So then you'd imagine it's like, well, you could at least try, right? You can at least try to get like 2 blocks in a row and just reorg. I mean, why not? Anyway.
Well, you could make a block, and then you make a transaction paying half of those fees, and leave it like a transaction paying. Yeah. So you incentivize someone to mine over your block.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the person mining over your block, they will get this transaction, otherwise they won't.
Okay, but that would be for that would actually be for the fee sniping episode, I would say.
Okay.
So the point here is that because
But
it
then
all
the other
depends on
people what have. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Leave for the other episode. Okay.
Yes. So the point here is that the moment the fees become, the subsidies become insignificant, it all depends on what available fees there are in the mempool, and then you could get mining irregularities, where it just makes more sense for a miner to remine a block, like a competing miner that didn't get the block, to retry getting that block instead of building on top of it, because there's way more money to be made in remining that particular block than mining the next block, simply because there aren't any significant fees available, right? So
That implies a lot of difference. Like you have a bunch of transactions paying high fees, and after those you don't have any more. Like you only have transactions paying small fees.
Well, the mempool is not full, right? That's the thing.
But even if it's full, you have like the exact amount to fill one block with like high fee transactions, and then you only have one set per byte transactions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
but what I imagine, in the future, for if Bitcoin doesn't die, is that there won't be such a big difference, like such a situation in which you only have enough fees for one block, and then after that people don't have more transactions to incentivize the mining of any block. But the problem that could happen is that these fees will be low, like they'll be stable but low, and somehow I don't know, like that's an imaginary problem, but and then there will be less miners, less people mining, and then Bitcoin becomes attackable because most people will be holding the Bitcoin, so they won't be making transactions even though they should, since Bitcoin is valuable and they're using Bitcoin. They're not paying for the mining.
Right, so that is indeed, so that's an underlying issue. I guess that's like the underlying issue on all of this, like who's actually paying for the for the mining, right? For securing the network, for the next blocks, etc. And now, currently, everybody's paying for it via subsidy, in the subsidy via inflation.
Yeah.
And the point is that the game theory starts to shift the moment you get an empty mempool. And the point about the and this is the point about the till emissions is, well, if there is at least like a base subsidy going on, then it smoothens things out, right? It just, you no longer have like the potential for these extreme irregularities because the number is never zero.
Mm-hmm.
The payout for the block is never zero. And that at least makes sure you're the potential for getting onto this extreme end becomes you don't get into the extreme end of things anymore. It smoothens things out a bit. Now we don't know to what extent that's actually relevant in terms of like the
but that's
the
a
risk.
different argument, like from what I said. So we have two arguments.
Yes, it is. No, so it's not. Yes. So what I mentioned is the motivation behind Peter Todd's post. And what you said is the reason for the underlying problem.
Okay. But yeah, you could say that there's this risk of the instability of the fees that could lead to reorgs and so on. But even if there's another issue, that is you don't have instability, but you have low fees. Stable but low fees. And I think tail emission wouldn't help with that, because the emission would be slow, like they would be lower in value as time passes, right? They will become less significant.
Can you repeat that?
The subsidy, it will become less significant if you have like a fixed amount forever on every block.
I think Peter Todd did mention a percentage fee,
Okay.
not a linear one or a flat number.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. So
But why would the fees? That's a problem for me. Why would the fees become low? Have you thought about that? Can you imagine the future in which everybody's using Bitcoin but no one is paying fees because everybody's using side channels, like everybody's using Liquid, uh, everybody's using banks, and the banks have a multi-sig thing between them to settle their balances.
yeah, so I'm not really. So a couple of things here. I'm not necessarily that wary of or that scared of such a scenario, in the sense of that, and this is the same argument, or like people complain of, like with Lightning. Oh no, it takes away the fees for the miners, etc. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. I mean, this thing got invented. The first fucking response to Satoshi on the idea of Bitcoin was like, this thing doesn't scale, right? And now it still doesn't scale, but all of a sudden now everybody's is complaining or afraid that that we have too much capacity or something. I don't get it. So I mean, if you look already, the blocks are pretty full the last couple of years. Yeah. So, and combine that with the stupid blockchain graffiti.
Yeah, but these people are
NFTs.
not. These people are, maybe the hypothesis is that these people are not willing to pay much more than they are already paying.
Yeah. So okay. So, yes. So that was a second. That's like the blockchain graffiti thing, right? If it gets to 1 cent per VByte, people are just going to do whatever simply because they can. But I think if we get like another order of magnitude adoption, the mempool's just gonna fill up permanently, and it's not gonna empty anymore. Because we're already so close to that point, right? It doesn't take a lot to fill up the mempool.
What if you're not getting adoption because of that? Not that I'm claiming that, but maybe we have lost a lot of adoption because fees have increased in the past, and if they increase in the future, you lose
Yeah, so
more
that's
users.
the reason. That's the reason why I'm not even all that in it. Like,
You don't care about adoption.
no, that I don't care about the plebs, right?
Yeah,
Because they're not important. It's
that's
it's
another
the-
show.
I know, but it's like the big play. It's the big players, and we already discussed this. But it's like the big players first, right? The people who are who have high economic value transactions.
That's what I
that are-
said. Like that's what my example, that we would have only banks and big players, and
Yes.
they wouldn't use the chain.
Yeah, but they have to.
They can use it very rarely.
Yes, but
for
if you
most of the things they can use a multi-sig thing.
Yes, of course. They're going to use it very rarely, but there is going to be a bunch of them. And it's not like we have that much of capacity anyway. So I'm not necessarily afraid of this. And then
We
when
have
it's
to make some napkin math to see how many of these big things we need and how much they
Yes, but
would
the
be
point-
willing to pay.
yes, but
to
the point
see
is
if
that there's always a level below that. So then we have the super big.
But then the
Cool.
total fees become too few, too slow. I don't know what word to use.
Yes, okay. So
Very small fees.
Yeah,
Very
so
small total
yes,
fees.
so let's put the let's put like the odds of getting into this scenario aside. Is it actually a problem? And I think that the guy on the scooter agrees with me that it's not an actual problem, but it's just a shift in expectation management that people have to realize that it's a question of
Why?
latency.
Why?
So you're going to pay the cost anyway. If you don't pay the cost in terms of transaction fees up front, right, collectively, you're going to pay the cost in terms of latency collectively. By which I mean that you're going to have to wait longer for more confirmations in order for you to be certain, or reasonably certain, that your transaction is not going to be reorged.
Okay, makes sense.
So that's an increase in latency. Time is money. So that's an increase in cost. But it's just the cost is just going to shift. It's going to shift from fees directly to latency, and that's going to impact use cases, obviously, because there's a difference in waiting. Like the rule of thumb now is like at least 3 blocks, I guess. So at minimum 30 minutes.
1 block. That's the rule of thumb.
No, because there's a technical there's just from a technical perspective, there's a possibility of reorging without anybody or orphaning, right? Without anybody trying to get an orphan. Just happens every so often. So the 1 block is not good enough. And with 3,
but they will re-include your transaction.
Yes, or not, right? I mean, that all depends.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
So you just have to adjust your behavior, and you technically already you already have to in relation to the value of the transaction.
Scale, right? If you make it like if you pay total fees that are like 100 times less than you pay today, or 1,000,000 times less. No, I don't know. I don't know the question of pay. Like it becomes possible for the government to attack. That sounds so silly.
Yes, so you need a minimal viable difficulty in order to make whatever the chain is non-trivial, right? And then you need decentralization in order to make it censorship resistant, etc. But
okay.
The point is that, I mean, even if they're going to that's a different show, I'd say.
Okay, let's save this show now. What are your final thoughts?
Okay, yeah, final thoughts. So, the point behind the tail emissions is about the possible irregularity that can that can occur because there is an innate state change within Bitcoin, where we go from having subsidies to no subsidies, that alters the game theory in the mining. Because there is now this option of getting to this extreme point where the fees are very low or scarce, right? Where you get this fuckery going on with there being incentives for miners to reorg blocks instead of mining on top of other blocks. But the ultimate point is that you are going. It's not necessarily a problem, quote unquote, because the way Bitcoin works, it can actually deal with this up until the point that the difficulty gets so low that it becomes trivial to attack, right? So that's a lower bound you mentioned, but you're going to pay the cost anyway, either by fees directly or by increased latency or increased potential latency, I should say technically. That way, right? That's another cost in terms of time, the fact that you have to wait for stuff, and that's going to require a adjustment in behavior of the users, where they have to incorporate that into their time locks and stuff, and when they assume a transaction to be final, quote unquote, or included in the amount of confirmations that they have to wait. And I guess the final point in that would be like, what is preferable? Do you pay the price in terms of inflation and get a more stable situation, or do you pay the price in latency and get a more chaotic situation where it's also more complex, because then you have to look at the state of the mempool. The mempool's not a global state, so do you actually know what's going on? have you actually have a way to gauge how many confirmations you have to wait for? Especially because there can always be some stupid idiot like PayPal coming along with a 90 Bitcoin transaction.
Don't do that.
So yeah, the question is like, where are you going to pay the cost, and what are the consequences? And the consequences is either devaluation of what you have through inflation or increased complexity and chaos.
Well, it can also just be fine, and you don't have to do anything, and everything works.
Or it
without
can indeed be
inflation,
fine.
and
Yes.
people just pay a lot.
Well, that's it.
That's it. Are you in favor of tail emission?
No, so the point is that it doesn't matter. But like we started, it's like, this is completely fucking pointless because there's nothing going to change about
So
this.
you think Peter Todd is wasting his time?
No, I think these things are important because how many people realize that how many people are aware of this latency issue, right? How many people are aware that you're going to pay the cost one way or another, either via fees or inflation or latency?
We just agreed that maybe we won't pay any cost.
No, you're paying the cost regardless.
Fees. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is cost to be paid.
So are you in favor or not?
Yes, and so I would say that. Well, the simple answer, yes. I would be in favor.
So you're a shitcoiner. That's it.
Yes, I'm a shitcoiner.
Let's end the show right now because you.
And
let's not make any more shows. I don't want to talk about a shitcoiner.
I think everybody who like fetishizes the 21 million is an absolute fucking idiot. Don't bother me. I look down upon you.
Okay,
yes.
so go to Ethereum. Go to Ethereum. That's what you have to do. Maybe we should do a show about going to Ethereum or something like that. You don't like the plebs? You can be a staker on Ethereum, where plebs don't enter, like the secret
I can
club.
be an Ethereum baron instead of a Bitcoin baron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.